The Reset podcast is sponsored by Bose. With my new Bose QC35 headphones, nothing gets between me and my music. The noise canceling is world class, they're completely Bluetooth, so there's no wires. The sound is amazing. My producer and I love these so much that we use them to record every single show. For more information about Bose QC35 headphones and other Bose products, check out Bose.com. Hey everyone, welcome to the 4th episode of the Reset podcast. I'm your host, Laura Mignott, co-founder of the brand experience agency DFlash, and we're coming to you from New York City. Each week, I bring in an influential friend from marketing, business, or even government, and we delve into what's really happening in the industry and try and make sense of it all. Of course, we can't talk about business without talking about how it impacts this very moment in time. We'll laugh, we'll debate, and we'll give frank insight into what's going on in the world and try and navigate our way through. All while enjoying some wine and french fries on my couch. This week, especially in light of the earth-shaking election results, I'm so happy to welcome the amazing Mary Scotton, Developer Evangelist at Salesforce, and all-around badass. We'll dive right in, and the first thing I want to talk to you, Mary, about is, one, welcome. We're so happy to have you.
Thank you. I'm very honored to be here.
In our very swanky studio, is whenever we start the podcast, we always focus on like my cool icebreaker question, which is a very simple question, but it often takes fun twists and turns. And I'm sure with you, it's going to take us in a whole crazy direction. What was your first job?
So the very first?
Very first.
When I was a kid, you mean?
Yeah. You can start with kid and then go to like adult, whatever you'd like.
I delivered newspapers.
Wow.
On my bike in my little rural town in New Jersey.
What was that like? How old were you?
I'm guessing it's under the legal age to work right now.
And so what made you decide to get the job?
You know, we always worked. My parents both worked hard. They were both the first to go to college in their families. And so, you know, everybody worked. You know, my sister and I both worked, and we worked as soon as we could. I mean, I was probably 10 or 11 doing that paper route. And then once I was able to work legally, I was, I worked in a local pharmacy, stocking shelves and being a cashier and that kind of stuff. So just, we have worked since the start in our family. Awesome.
And so and that's where your awesome, amazing work ethic comes from?
It does. It comes from being part of an immigrant family, oddly enough, right?
Really? Where's your family from?
Well, Irish and Italian, which was, there was a wave of immigration, that we forget about.
No, that happened?
It happened. And it turns out people weren't super excited about the Irish and the Italian working with them.
That sounds familiar. I don't know where I've heard that recently about people not being really excited about immigrants.
Yeah. If you look just, slightly to the past, right? So my grandparents coming over. And so, for me, it was, the American dream. Move out of the city, go to college, get your kids a better life. All that. So, and I didn't know any of that growing up. We didn't talk about it. I didn't know that there were signs that used to say no Irish need apply until I was in college.
Really?
And so we just we were on our track. We're like, you go to school, you do good, go to college. It's like, there was no, I want to take a year off.
Oh gosh, I hate that.
Maybe I'll take a gap year. Like, what?
No, it's yeah. I don't understand it. I'm an immigrant. Our whole family moved here when I was 3, and the idea that like there was some leisureness with college is just. If I told my mother that, I think she'd slap me across the face. It's like, wait, no, we worked really hard when we got to this country so that you all could go to private school so you could get good grades and get into a good college, and then you're telling me you're going to take a year off to go find yourself? You can find yourself out of this house. That was never an option. It blows my mind, and when I hear that stuff today, I'm just like, no. And it's like, but it's the same deal. Like, you want to be hardworking, you want to really make your parents proud, and you see that growing up, and you want to do the same thing. You want to have that great way at life where, you know, it's not just about like, okay, I go to work, I do this, but like I'm building this family, and like you've got like you have a tremendous story, on how you got to be how awesome you are. And I'd love for you to tell us, like, what is it that you actually do at Salesforce? Because I mean, so for our listeners out there, I have a great story as to how I met Mary a few years ago. So it was like 2 or 3 years ago, I got invited to this dinner in this very strange location in Chinatown that, if you asked me to tell you where it was, I probably have no idea how I even found it, because it's on one of those like half streets. I don't think it's written in English. I think it's written in Mandarin, and you have to kind of walk and figure out, and then you go down these stairs. And then we got there with this awesome dinner with like a friend of mine who had put the 20 people that she found were awesome, and Mary was one of the awesome people there. And we ended up sitting next to each other and talking each other's ears off. And I was like, "You're like the coolest person I've ever met." And like, "Where do you work?" And I'm Salesforce. I'm like, "What?" Okay, what is it you do? And that was the beginning. So I'd love for you to kind of give us like the story of how you got to be at Salesforce, and what is it you do now?
Yeah, I do remember that dinner, and it was that funny little street, right? That little bend. I was like, I don't know any of these people. Where am I going? And yeah, it was an intentional gathering. It was the first time I'd done that, and I try to do that now, actually, with people I meet, and I want them to meet other people that I think are awesome. But starting at Salesforce, that was probably when I had just started in the evangelist role, which was 2013. And what I do, my job is to educate and enable the Salesforce developers and administrators who work on our platform. And I help them learn our platform tools, and I also teach about diversity and inclusion. And so I've been doing that now, I think I said, since 2013. And so things really kind of picked up in 2014, which is when all of the tech companies started to release their diversity stats.
And like, ooh, child.
And yeah, so then it wasn't just a like, hey, I kind of think there might be something going on here. And then it was, oh yeah, there is.
Problem.
Hello. And so now we have the numbers, right? We have the metrics. And so what can we do? And so, part of my time is spent, working with developers, talking about code. Part of my time is spent working with administrators, talking about configuring and automating business processes on our platform. And then part of my time is spent talking about diversity and inclusion in that same community. Working with our user groups to make their events more inclusive, working with folks who are underrepresented in our community, talking about opportunities and making connections, encouraging them to come and speak at our events, things like that. And so that's what I do.
And, the one thing I always found super impressive about you, Mary, is the fact that, like, you actually get your hands dirty and you go to these events, but then you also speak, but then you're there helping the kids learn how to code. And it's just like, and how was that when you first got into that? When you said, all right, I'm going to start going to these hackathons and like hearing what these groups are saying and kind of really getting into it?
For me, it was a journey. It's a slow process of, that first time I went to a developer group and realized that of the 50 people there, 5 of them were women and 2 of them were programmers. Like, whoa, okay, and sort of, okay, women in tech. And then I actually went to a hackathon in Oakland, the first hackathon they did at Impact Hub Oakland, and the hackathon for Black male achievement. And so it was high school, or like 14-year-old boys there on the weekend hacking problems and solving problems in their community. And it was amazing. And I heard Van Jones speak and pretty much signed on right there for the movement. I was like, yes, this is a thing. And I think that was probably around the same time that the sets came out. I was like, wow, because I'd been like, oh, it's so hard to be only 15% of, women are only 15% of the tech workforce. It's not nearly as hard as being 1%.
Yeah, or 0.0.
Yeah, of the tech workforce. So, I started to realize there were more people who were underrepresented in tech and kind of broadened my lens. But even that, I've been broadening my lens since then, looking at other groups. and LGBTQ community, the disability community, and realizing that there are a lot of different challenges. And so trying to keep that lens open, not just focusing on one group, but talking about inclusion as a whole. Like, let's all come to work who we are, and let's put our biases aside.
And what have you seen has been the change since you've now kind of been in that role for the last few years? What's been the thing that's probably surprised you, or whoa, okay?
I've seen a big change in the conversation. It kind of made this arc of talking about women in tech, and that means diversity. And you'd go to an event and it'd say, "Oh, we have such a diverse event here." And like, look, we have 3 white women speaking. Yay!
Score!
Woohoo! So I feel like we've really, kind of grown up and come along to say, okay, well, what do we really mean by diversity? And I'm seeing more events, doing more outreach and being more open about, hey, we are a welcoming community. We want everyone to come. And I've just, I've seen my circle diversify, which I think is super important. And that's something that I like to, encourage other people to do and say, take a look at your personal circle, take a look at your work circle. Who are you connected to? Do they all look like you? If they do, that's kind of a thing. So
that needs to change.
Yeah.
It's interesting, post the unpleasantness, I think it's kind of showed this sort of disconnect in terms of like when folks talk about diversity, is it only about, okay, well, if we have white women here, that solves the problem and we don't have to worry about it. But I think one thing that kind of came out of this recently was that like, well, no, diversity means everybody. And it's not just about, oh, well, we'll just take, the path of least resistance, we'll add more women. It's like, no, you need LGBTQ people who might also be Mexican, who might be Black. And that's the way that you really get diversity. I mean, like, it was funny. I did an event, last 2 weeks ago, with women in tech. And it was really funny because like, they had asked me to help kind of get some of the speakers. And so I got a bunch of speakers who were my friends. And so my friend circle cuts across everything under creation. And so the event organizer, and then all my staff for that particular event happened to be pretty diverse because I hire people who do good work. I don't really care what you look like. If you happen to be who look like me, great. I don't care. If you don't do a good job, you're fired. But like, the event organizer came up to me and she's like, I just want to say, this diversity is amazing here. It's the very first conference I've been to where like so many speakers have not been white women, but their stories and what they do isn't so great. And I'm like, yeah, how'd you find them? I asked. Like, it's like if that's not your circle, then go find the other circles. Like I said, the joke I was talking when we talked about how we first met. Mary, you were the only white person at the dinner. It was 20 people. Everyone was Black except for you, and no one cared.
Yeah, and that was one of those things where I was like, well, this is my opportunity to meet people who are not currently in my circle. Because when I did start this work, that was my circle. Everyone was white. It was all women in tech, white women in tech. And everyone was in the Salesforce world. And so I was meeting at that dinner people who were not in the Salesforce world, who had different jobs, right? Marketing and things like that. And so, I was excited to, expand my circle at that point. And a lot of good connections have come out of that. So it is, you have to do it intentionally. And at first, when I talk to people about it, they're like, yes, if you're a man, go to a women in tech event. It might be awkward. Think about that for a while. Think about how other people might feel and go be awkward. It's okay. Be uncomfortable. And I think it's, I don't like everybody, from that dinner, maybe I'm 2 people that I ended up really staying connected with, but that's okay. You need to put yourself in a situation where you can meet somebody and then see where that goes. And that's kind of been my philosophy of reaching out to people intentionally and trying to, build those relationships, but not forcing it if it's not a thing. But if it is, then they introduce me to somebody else, and then we go to another conference, and then we meet some more people. And so, yeah, I feel, this year when I was planning for Dreamforce, which is Salesforce's big conference, I was not only had my own list of speakers who I could recommend, but I also had other people that I could ask who could then send me more. And so I had a nice big list. If anybody needs speakers.
Mary is the conduit to some of the most amazing speakers. I mean, every speaking event that I went to at Dreamforce this year had an amazing woman who happened to be diverse, who was killer smart, knew exactly, like Leah Walker. My gosh, I mean, she's amazing. And it's not about the fact that they happen to be women or happen to be diverse, but the fact that they're so smart. And it's just nice to see that these people are getting a shine at somewhere where everyone knows about this big conference. And these people who do great work are getting a well-deserved spotlight. And I think it's very much this idea of this is a village together and it's not separate. And if we can get more people to get into groups where they wouldn't normally be, you're better off. Like I always say, you have to be comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Yes. Yes.
And and for every white dude who doesn't want to go to an event and I'm going to be the only one. Well, think about how it is for me.
Every day.
Like every day, what it's like for me, where it's like, I have to go to these events and make the joke and see how many black people are going to be at this event. And and then we all do the same thing because we all look at each other and say, hey, and go make friends. Because that's what I do at events. Cause I always, it's crazy to think that's what you kind of instinctually do. But you're like, well, you're here and I'm here and this is an expensive conference. So if we're both here, we should probably know each other. And then you make friends. But my whole thing is that it's not just about making the friend with the black guy, it's making the friends with all these little white dudes too. And being like, hey, what brings you here? And, sometimes they don't want to talk to you and you're like, well, that's your loss because I'm awesome.
That's true.
But then for everyone that says, no, you have three who are like, dude, what is it you do? And then you're like, oh, cool. And I think that's what's missing from what's happening when we're talking about diversity here. It's that you've got to put your hands together with other folks and not just be like, well, I'm doing the least possible. Isn't that enough? No, you really gotta you've got to get into it and not be so shied away from it. And I think, it's just awesome. Like I said, I'm consistently blown away by what you do because it's just refreshing, and that you're just refreshingly honest about it. I'm like, hey, this isn't easy.
Yeah, I look back at all the blogs I've written in the past year. The blog posts are all, and then I did this thing and it was awkward and I apologized, and then I learned about this group of people that I didn't know anything about, and I went to the first Lesbians Who Tech conference, my first one, in San Francisco. And I am a lesbian, but that is not a community that I spend time with in the tech world. I don't think about it much. And so I went to that event. I was like, whoa, we're in the Castro Theater in San Francisco.
Awesome.
There are 1,200 women here. This is amazing. And one of the women who spoke is transgender, Angelica Ross, and I was, listened to her story, and, this is a whole world I know nothing about. And in that 20 minutes, I got educated and started to look into it and, wanted to support the work she's doing in Trans Tech, which is an organization to train transgender folk to be web developers. Wow. And that's one of the things I see is that there are a lot of groups who, will focus on their community, and, tech is such a great opportunity, such a great job. It's opened up a lot of doors. And so I've been really trying to support those groups in bringing new people into tech and also supporting those communities. But for me, it's just, the journey is I'm kind of opening doors everywhere I go to another community and to learn more. What are their concerns? What are the types of issues they're facing when they come into the workforce? So how do we make the workforce or the workplace more inclusive? If you don't understand the different groups, then, you don't understand maybe what some of the challenges would be. Where do you go to the bathroom if you're transgender?
We're in this sort of new climate, the world's changed. We are recording this post the election. And, a lot of people have varying mixed feelings. I think you and I would be like, oh God. But as of every disappointment, there is an opportunity. And kind of where do you think we go from here? Like what, in the world that you see every day, and the job that you take such amazing pride in and do such great work in, like where do we go from here?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's an opportunity, just like you were saying, to build those bridges and to put our hands together to support each other. So what I've been seeing is communities reaching out to each other and saying, hey, I'll walk with you. I'll stand by you. I'll support you. And that it's important to have separate groups, right? You want to be in a space where, like for me, that everyone's okay with me being queer, right? Like I don't want to have to worry, right? I love that. But I feel like we need to step out of those groups and to work across groups, and that's really how we are going to build the movement that we need now to make sure that our rights are protected. I think there's a lot of fear, and it's valid fear.
No, absolutely.
I have been Googling Nazi Germany, and, it's a valid fear that we have. And so that the rights that we have taken for granted, really, at this point, could be taken away. And
yeah, I think it's a matter of, like, people, you cannot be complacent. And I think that's probably, a fault of a very long election cycle and people just saying, okay, well, it doesn't really count, doesn't really matter. And now, like, oh my gosh, what do I do now? And I think it's also a time where you have to also say, okay, look inward. I mean, I have a lot of friends who don't want to go home for the holidays because, like, they're in big cities and, it's hell diverse, but, they're from the Midwest and they've got family who didn't vote the way they voted. And, like, they're like, how do I do this? And I think a good friend of mine wrote the other day, is like, listen, gotta talk to people. Just how we're talking about how diversity is being uncomfortable with, being comfortable with being uncomfortable. It's the same deal. It's like, well, you have your thoughts about the situation, and I have my thoughts about the situation. Let's actually talk to each other.
Right. I think that those respectful conversations that are uncomfortable are what we need to do. And it's not perfect in the big cities. The reports I'm getting from Oakland and Alameda are disturbing. And so I think it's across the board. And, the things that I'm seeing in reaction. So there was a school with racist graffiti. And so the next morning, all the families walked to school together. Right. And we're like, we are here together and everyone is welcome. I just saw a photo of hands around Lake Merritt. So the folks in Oakland did a protest where Lake Merritt is 3 miles around.
Oh my gosh.
And so people held hands all the way around the lake. So that image of solidarity and, we're all in this together in Oakland, which is one of the most diverse cities. That's what keeps me like, okay, we can get through this. And it strengthens my resolve to make sure that, I'm educating and enabling about inclusion in tech. So that we stay strong and we're stronger together.
Yeah, I think exactly. I think that's, the most important thing is that we are stronger together than apart. Mm-hmm. And I think if you didn't hear that before for the last year, hear it now, that, like, the more you can say, listen, we're in tech. We know that, because, like, it's the thing about technology is that there's been this huge issue about the fact that, the percentages are so low. And if ever there was a time for you senior leaders in tech to say, hey, listen, like, we are in this with you guys. It's like, open your doors a bit more. Get your hands dirty. Like, come to these hackathons, come to these schools, go to these programs, go to these impact hubs, and put your money where your mouth is. I mean, lots of these companies have tons and tons of money to spend on any number of things, like Zumba classes and Mexican food every day. It's like, put that out there to, like, bring some folks in it wouldn't normally see, and have them see what your companies do, because you probably get a great many people who could be amazing employees if they only knew you existed. I think it's like showing up is the first key for this stuff. It's like, if people don't know that, like I remember when you talked to me about what Salesforce admins did, and then my friend who works in nonprofits happened to be at Dreamforce, and he was like, "Oh yeah, I've become a Salesforce admin," and I was like, "What?" Yeah. And he's like, "Yeah, it's a great way for us to track our donations," and it blew me away because I'm like, "Wait a minute." So my friends who are working in nonprofit who make $0 now are learning a skill that can put them in a position that even if they're not going to be at this one nonprofit, if they go to another one, they can automatically increase their salaries. And it's opportunity that they didn't know existed. Or like women who are coming out of, broken homes who learn how to become a Salesforce admin, who went from being an office administrator to now being a Salesforce admin, have these amazing opportunities. And I think knowledge is a power. And if we know, and if these communities know that there all these opportunities in tech to learn how to code and do all these different things from such a younger age, that's how we get through this together.
Yeah, I think that is a really big component of it. And I think that also how we hire is a big component. One of my favorite organizations is Code 2040, and they focus on Black and Latino college students who have computer science degrees or studying for computer science degrees and hooking them up with those connections that they need.
It's about the hookup.
Right? It's all about the hookup. It is, right? Because how do you hire? You hire through referrals. And so if I come knocking on the door and no one knows me, that's a really hard sell. And so just having an internship in Silicon Valley opens up the doors. It doesn't mean you're going to get a job. It means you have the opportunity to prove that you can do that work. And I feel like that is how you build the reputation and build that connection. And so that group is now in their third or fourth cohort. And so not only are those students connecting with folks, at the internships, that they're connecting with each other. So we're building out this network, right? The circle and the network
is key.
Is there. So I feel like that's really key. So there are students coming out with computer science degrees who would make great engineers. And there are also people my age who, been coding Java for years that would make great engineers. And, that's not who the tech companies are looking for.
If you're not at the top 10 schools, or you don't look you're not like a bro, they don't think that you exist. And it's like,
right. So just kind of opening that lens, I feel like, there's a lot of opportunity. So the argument that, no one applied for this job who happens to be not a straight white dude, it means you're not trying hard enough because those people
are
out there. So work a little harder. So pushing, on your recruiting department, opening your lens a little bit, I think will make a big difference.
Yeah, I know. I because it's the flip side. I think oftentimes, from my friends, who could be Black, Latino, and because they're afraid to go and talk in these groups because they're going to be the only one and feel like they're not going to fit in. And I say the same thing back to those folks. I'm like, it isn't easy being a person of color in our industry, but that doesn't mean that it's impossible. But just how you want those folks to make an effort, you have to make an effort. And if it means going to a beer pong event and you think it's kind of strange, whatever, go. Because every opportunity you take is something to help you build a part of your network. If I hadn't gone to that dinner, we would have never met. And I've now had an amazing opportunity to get to know you and get to go to Dreamforce and really meet some amazing people along the way. And it's a risk, of course, but without risk, there's not a reward. And not being afraid to say, because they're not going to like me because I'm different. Okay, well, some of them may not, but you may find that good dude who you guys have a common thing because you have the same sneakers or you guys both like the Mets. But you're never going to know that unless you actually make the effort to be uncomfortable. And I'll be the first one to tell you, it is not easy. And I've got some stories that make your hair stand. But I wouldn't trade where I am now for anything because the way that we've been able to build this business in the last 6 years has solely been on the fact that I don't care. What do I have to lose? Why wouldn't I go up and ask someone to come speak at an event? Why wouldn't I ask you to come be on my podcast? Duh, of course. And if you say no, okay, it sucks for you. Or why not have coffee with me? If you don't want to, again, it sucks for you. But if I don't put the effort in, then you can't complain. It's if you're mad about the election but you didn't vote, shut up. honestly, Colin Kaepernick, I'm talking about you. Because, dude, but the same deal. It's like, if you don't put the effort in, shut up.
And it is hard. And I know, a lot of the, talks I've seen are about, being an introvert, and I don't want to go ask people to coffee, or I don't want to network. And, I think that's why I kind of default to the coffee. I was like, we're going to go to coffee. It'll be 30 minutes max. If it's terrible, it's 30 minutes that were terrible. And I've never asked someone to coffee who said no. And I think that's pretty common. Hey, I just want to get a little time. I was really interested in what you said about whatever. People want to talk about themselves. But that's a way to get connected on that more personal level. So a lot of people are not comfortable in the let's go to the happy hour and I have to make small talk. But the one-on-one, then you get to a real conversation a little bit quicker, I think. And you find that thing that's in common. Oh, what'd you do this weekend? Or, oh, yeah, I also, whatever, surf or knit. Yeah. So you're going to find something that's in common. And again, you're not going to like everybody. It's not going to work out with everybody. But enough times, I think that's really a way to kind of grow that circle, both for your personal career. Oh, hey, I might want to introduce you to my friend, Chike, who is doing this thing. And then he's got the other thing. And, maybe you'd come and speak at his thing, too. And, so it's, for me, the connections have been leading me to other opportunities, and I hope to do that, for the folks in my circle, right, and connecting them to each other. But it takes that first step of, hi,
like, what do you do?
What do you do?
Yeah, I mean, I always make jokes that people think that I love networking and all that stuff. I honestly hate people. I really do. I'm actually a hella introvert. No one believes this, but I actually am, because I've always been super shy, and it's really, really hard for me. But what I figured out, years ago, was that, like, if I don't do this, I'm going to fail. Like, and if I look at it from everybody else, and if you read every book and everything about this, it's about these networks and connections that people have made, which have helped them with their success. And for me, that was a turning point where it's like, I literally just have to force myself to do this. And, like, I always make a joke that, like, you go buy the food. Like, you could always make a friend buy the food.
Yeah, you'd be like, oh, yeah, these are pretty good, whatever.
Like, what is this cheese? Oh, my God.
Yeah.
Or there's no alcohol here. Like, that's why I always say, like, go have a drink with someone and have some wine and french fries, because, like, who doesn't like wine and french fries? If you don't, you're an alien. So, but, like, that same deal, like, you sort of have to force yourself to do it, because it's your network is your net worth, as someone said. And I think, the one thing that it's been kind of really amazing and super heartening about this podcast is that everyone I've asked to do it, they're like, of course. And I'm like, really? Oh, this is great. And it was just my kind of unusual idea that I thought needed to be here. And I've been super excited by all the great folks who've come through. So 2017 is about less than 2 months away. What do you think? What do you think is going to happen in 2017?
I will tell you my hopeful predictions.
Sunshine lollipops.
Right? Is that we'll band together, and the maybe groups within, say, a company, there are different employee resource groups, which are these affinity groups, right? And they tend to kind of work and throw their own parties and that kind of things. And so I see those groups working more closely together and saying, let's take our 1% and our 2% and put them together, get 3%, woo. And making diversity and inclusion important. And I do see more companies getting on board and really prioritizing diversity and inclusion as a corporate strategy. This is important to our success.
Yeah,
this isn't just make me feel good. This is actually super important.
And funding it. It'll put dollars in your pockets.
Funding it, right? And thinking about how they recruit. And, I mean, we're the tech industry. Use the technology.
You have all this data.
Right? You've got the data to see if people are being paid equally. You have the technology to not need to know my name or my gender before you hire me, for example. So, I feel like I've seen a lot of those tools coming out. Blendor is one that I'm a fan of, which is, again, it strips the things that you might be biased against, so that as people are coming through that recruiting pipeline, you're looking at the applications for people's skills, not for the things that you might be biased about, consciously or unconsciously. And I think it's hard to, even if you recognize, you say, well, okay, well, that's a woman, so I shouldn't be biased, but then now I'm like in this loop, sort of. Well, I'm not going to hire them because they're a woman, but now I don't know. So just take it out. Yeah. Take it out of the equation. So I see us, using technology to kind of break down some of those barriers. And I see the different affinity groups working more closely together. And I really do, see corporations coming around to, this is a priority, and this is we're going to make equality a core value. We're going to fund these programs. We're going to let our employees know that everybody's welcome here. So that's the 2017 I look forward to.
Yeah, everybody's welcome. I think I would agree. I think now more than ever, it's everyone's responsibility to say, like, our doors are open. We want you. We're not closing off to anyone. And let's build something strong together. So I think that, fingers crossed, and we're all going to be hopeful that come next year, we're definitely seeing some really amazing changes. So, Mary, it's been awesome to have you. You were spectacular, as I thought you would be. And thank you so very much. I really appreciate it. And I will have lots of information about some of the programs you mentioned, like Blendor and Code 2040 in the show notes. And so if you want to get involved, I'll happily put those information out there for you guys so that you can find about these companies, get involved, donate to charities that you care about. So ACLU, Planned Parenthood, Southern Poverty Law Center. It's automatic. You can take on your credit card, so that, we're all in this together. And I think if we do it well, we'll all be in a better place. So thanks, everybody.
Well, thanks, Laura. I said yes to the podcast because I love hanging out with you, and this has been really fun. So thank you so much.
The Reset Podcast is sponsored by Bose. With my new Bose QC35 headphones, nothing gets between me and my music. The noise canceling is world class. They're completely Bluetooth, so there's no wires. The sound is amazing. My producer and I love these so much that we use them to record every single show. For more information about Bose QC35 headphones and other Bose products, check out Bose.com.
Audiation.